thank you very much. I will try to. Good afternoon. Well, thank you for the invitation again. Just to comply with the streak of the time, I jot down some things that I will like to share with you. So I was asked by the organizers to set up the scene for this panel with a short introduction to the economic challenges of offshore renewables, underlining private sector financing challenges. The contributions that I would like to bring to this conference are based on my 10 years experience working on the subjects of the economy of the sea in different parts of the world and in different industries, namely offshore energy. I would like to highlight the topic I consider to be the critical factors for success in this industry. Although operating developments in offshore renewable industry are longer, are more difficult, and are more expensive than anticipated, the will to develop this industry has not declined. In this context, I have 9 topics for reflection to share with you. The first topic is related to the fact that many times some entities directly or indirectly concerned with offshore renewable energy forget that they are dealing with a complex system. Dealing with complex systems demands an integrated vision of the entire economy as a whole. And this is especially true of the economy of the sea. An integrated and holistic vision emphasizes the industry challenges, but also the challenges between industries, and tries to include into the equation all the positive and negative externalities of each industry in the overall economy. In this integrated and holistic vision, the issues related with sustainability, including the 3 pillars, economic, environmental, and social, gain importance. The recognition of the existence of a complex system and the need of an holistic vision demands intense cooperation. This is the second topic I would like to bring up to you. This cooperation is between academic institutions that have the fundamental knowledge and companies that have the ability to transform this fundamental knowledge into business. This cooperation is also between developed countries that have more know-how and some liquidity problems, and emerging countries that have liquidity and are starting to recognize the environmental problems. And cooperation between the fossil fuel industry that has more liquidity and more know-how in how to operate offshore, but has environmental issues, and the renewable sector that has less liquidity but is less harmful to the environment. In this context, all the ingredients for full cooperation between institutions, governments, and industries are present. The third topic I would like to address is about financing projects. A fundamental rule in economics is that it is the responsibility of the promoter to demonstrate the economic arguments of his or her project. In order to have the possibility of financing, keep in mind that even in finance shortage scenarios, good projects will always have money available. I will repeat, good projects will have always money available. So the main financial challenge for offshore renewable promoters is to demonstrate that they have a good project. In today's unstable world, to show the merits of each project is not easy. And this task is even harder and more challenging if you consider the fact that due to cost reduction plans, financial institutions have reduced substantially their staff. And because of that, less in-house knowledge exists to understand specific projects. As you know, no one will finance projects that they do not understand anything about it. Although we are living difficult times in the Western world, it is not impossible to get finance for good projects. In the following topics, I will speak about some arguments that seem to me that mean clear add value that offshore renewable energy can offer to society. In this context, the fourth topic for reflection is, I would like to bring up is the environmental argument. At the moment, we live in a changing world that produces enormous pressures for the exploitation of natural resources and for energy consumption. This pressure would be even greater if it weren't for the economic crisis in some countries. This historic momentum of massive economic, social, and environmental change, as indicated by the emergence of new economic decision centers and powered by the legitimate aspirations of the world people to improve their lives, lead us to the following questions. What will be the sources of energy that will support the future economic growth? What will be the mix of energy sources that will contribute to the sustainability of the world, considering the three pillars of sustainability? The offshore renewable will have a fundamental role in the answer to these questions. The high speed of change has provoked huge instability and some tensions. During periods of instability, energy independence or self-sufficiency is of particular importance. In analyzing the importance of each offshore renewable energy project, an evaluation regarding the importance of endogenous sources of energy and their contribution to energy self-sufficiency of each region is recommended. This is the fifth topic of reflection I would like to bring up in my presentation, the argument of the importance of local sources of energy for each region in a turbulent and unstable world. Moving on, the sixth topic of reflection I would like to share with you is related with the value chain of each project and the importance of the corresponding support activities. In the measuring of the added value of each offshore renewable energy project to the society, beyond the energy that will be produced, it is important to quantify the impact of each project on the support activities, namely the expansion of scientific knowledge, the impact on the shipbuilding and ship maintenance industry, the impact on ports and the shipping industry, the impact on metal structure industry, and other support activities. The evaluation of the projects has to consider also the impact of each project on the economy of the sea as a whole. My seventh topic is related with the multi-use of the projects. Operating at sea is more complex, is more expensive, and suffers the costs of operating in a hostile environment. The studies of knowing and diagnosing the context of each operation are heavier. The ocean is much more heterogeneous than it seems, and general solutions for heterogeneous environments do not exist. The rule one size fits all is not applicable, mainly because there is the need for specific solutions for each part of the ocean. Specific context is very important. Because of the need of such heavy investments and analysis, in evaluating each offshore renewable energy project, we should consider the level of adaptability and flexibility of the equipment that will be used at sea and its multi-use potential by other economy of the sea industries, trying to maximize turnover or split costs. To get the maximum benefits from the natural resources, which is the sea, it is fundamental to have an integrated approach of all the economy of the sea subsectors, supported by a strong marine or maritime culture. In the eighth topic, I would like to alert you to a barrier that can constrain the development of the offshore renewable energy industry, both technologically and financially. This barrier is the lack of information. Lots of the specific geophysical characteristics of the ocean in terms of waves, winds, currents, and tides technical outputs and profitability indices of the projects are not known. This lack of information causes great insecurity and instability among potential financing entities, causing increases in risk premiums and difficulties in assessing financing. This is a great area of potential cooperation between sciences involved in the study of the sea and all economic players. The ninth and last topic I would like to share is the importance of the vertical forms of financing. As I have said before, it is important to present in first place the economic and business fundamentals of each project related to offshore renewable energy, taking into consideration the points I have made to decide on the right source of finance. To complement the necessary equity part of the project financing, it will be necessary to find a financing entity with the adequate profile for the project according to the risk evaluation. Less risky projects will be in the scope of the traditional sources of financing, such as the commercial banks. And high-risk projects will be in the scope of venture capital or even government funds. To conclude, and due to the fact that this is an emerging industry with huge needs of research and development, vertical forms of financing funds will be needed. By vertical forms of financing funds, I mean specific funds for the offshore renewable energy industry, to complement generally financing funds applicable to all industries, the so-called horizontal financing forms. The calculation of the amount of the value of this vertical fund has to consider the importance of the environmental argument, the endogenous argument, the value chain argument, and the multi-use argument, and other arguments that add value to society. Thank you.
Your presentation.
Okay, thank you in behalf of the Cohesion and Development Agency the invitation to be here in the WavEC annual seminar. This is a strategic theme for Portugal, so it's my pleasure to be here. In the next few minutes, I must meet the big challenge to presenting 4 principal topics. Give you the main new principles of the Portugal 2020, the specific objectives of the thematic and regional operational programs about research and innovation, and to link this, and this is very important, the needs, the alignment with thematic priorities of the research and innovation strategies for smart specialization, and last, the priority given in the Portugal 2020 to the synergies between structural funds and other research, innovation, competitiveness European programs. So, the Portugal 2020 is organized in 4 thematic areas: competitiveness and internationalization, sustainability, social inclusion and employment, human capital. And we have 2 cross-cutting areas: the public administration reform and the territorialization of policies. Naturally, the Portugal 2020 is aligned with the 3 pillars of the Europe 2020 strategy, so we have the same big goals: smart, sustainable, and inclusive growth. As you know, the Portuguese Partnership Agreement was adopted in July. Now, in this moment, we are in the final phase of the operational programs negotiation. So you are now have all the conditions to begin the implementation of Portugal 2020. So we have 4 thematic programs and 7 regional OPs. This for the cohesion funds. Cohesion funds are the European Social Fund, European Regional Development Fund, and the Cohesion funds. And we have another OP for the European Maritime Fund and 3 OPs for the European Agriculture Fund. So the numbers, it's very important. For the Cohesion Fund's total allocation for Portugal is 21.1 thousand millions of euros. And the big focus on Portugal 2020 is research, innovation, internationalization, and competitiveness of the Portuguese economy and regions. And these objectives concentrate almost 50% of this total allocation of the structural funds, of the cohesion funds. So I would like emphasize a new set of principles in terms of management and governance of Portugal 2020. Now we have common rules for all funds. So in the last we have several regulations. Now we have a common regulation for all funds with common rules. So this is more simple for all promoters, companies, and other institutions. So we have another principle will be transversal in the whole system, contractualization of results. And this principle is for the managing authorities. They assign a performance contract. They must accomplish some results regarding the objectives and the targets of the programs. The intermediate bodies like IAPMEI, ICEP, FCT, science, and the institutions intermediary with and the beneficiaries also have to sign a contract of performance. And last, the beneficiaries too. So the objectives of all approved projects in Portugal 2020 must contribute to the results of the specific objectives of the program. So we have this principle, horizontal contractualization of results with all actors of the system. Also, a new principle, this is about simplification and improving access to finance. Was created a financial institution specially oriented for the support CMEs. So we are now, the next slide you can see, we are putting a lot of efforts in reducing administrative costs and simplification of all process. We have a multi-level governance. It's not easy in Portugal, but we have established Interministerial Coordination Committee for Portugal 2020, involving all ministers. It's the first time. And this is very important because this is a good way to promote coordination and synergies between public policies around the objectives of 2020. Also, there will be a performance reserve who rewards the OPs with better results. In 2019, will be an evaluation of the first results and execution of the programs. So the better programs will receive a reward, something. So in the objective of create this idea of the results and the importance of the objectives of the Portugal 2020. Simplification. Now, for the first time, we have like a one-stop shop for all promoters of all kinds of institutions in Portugal 2020. This is a common door of entry for access funding. So there is no, we don't know where is the PO, the OP or the instrument. We have a portal where we can find all the information, and the promoters, the beneficiaries, have a space, space for know the situation of his project. So we have applications submitted electronically, and we have, for simplification, the trust principle. So we are we will simplify the process of the analysis of the applications, but for those who not comply the project outcomes or other conditions of the projects, there will be penalizations. So we trust, and for that, and so the bonus and penalizing mechanism will be reinforced. There is competition in assessing funds, just calls, the invitations for a small kind of entities. This is not the objective, so it's a competition in assessing funds. We also are working in a simplification and the contractualization process, and this is not for you because we are companies here, but for the public projects higher than 25 million euros, there is a special demanding procedures and more transparency in the discussion and approval of this kind of projects. So for us, this is important. This axis of the programs who strengthen the research, technological development, and innovation. All the thematic OP and the 7 region OPs, they have these 5 specific objectives. We have 2 classic objectives, like increase the scientific production and the business investment and research and innovation, but we introduced in Portugal 2020 2 new objectives, and we have, it's very important to us. This is the dimension for transfer of scientific and technology knowledge to the business sector, and promote business cooperation between industries, cooperation between companies and science and technology institutions. So these new objectives are new in Portugal, and we have a lot of money here and a lot of mechanisms, new instruments here. We want to support the pilot projects, the demonstration projects, so several kind of instruments to disseminate the good results of the science and technological to the enterprise, because this is a problem in Portugal, because we have a lot of finance in research and we need to valorize economic valorization of this science. So we put great attention and this kind of objectives, cooperation and dissemination and transfer of knowledge. Another new objective, another new aspect in the Portugal Wind, and this is about community rules. Big companies can only be supported in this priority X. So all the projects all projects must be integrated with the process of research and technological development of the companies. So for projects of the big companies, only we can support innovative activities in these acts of priorities of the programs. So, and must be aligned with smart specialization. It's another message important here in Portugal 2020, and particularly in this research and innovation. The smart specialization, this is a methodology that a commission, I am sorry. So the message is the importance of smart specialization. All calls of the last 5 objectives, and is support to research and innovation, must full alignment with the research and innovation strategies for smart specialization thematic priorities. So we have small calls, specific calls to answer for specific territorial priorities or specific thematic priorities. So it's very important to know the strategy, the innovation, the research and innovation strategy of the regions and the national who was developed in parallel to give an overall coherence between territorial and sectorial innovation and research strategy. Also, the last message, this is there will be plus core and complementarity with other European instruments. So we, and this is also a message from the Commission, who encourage the synergies between European structural funds and other research, innovation, and competitiveness programs. We talk about like Horizon, COSME, Life, Connecting Europe Facility, and Creative Europe programs, for example. So it's possible, you can read after the slide, but this is possible to support financing projects, parallel projects, support the same projects, not the same expenses, of course, or support projects in different stage. For instance, a project was approved in the Horizon, more science oriented, then can send to the structural funds to be financed by innovation or the pilot projects or demonstration projects. So, this is the main message. So the importance in the Portugal 2020 to the research and innovation. There is a lot of money here, and there is an increase in the actions and measures in these objectives. This is important, the alignment with the thematic priorities of smart specialization. Smart specialization is very important. The priority in transfer knowledge and in cooperation, and the priority in promotion and exploitation synergies with other European research, innovation, and competitiveness programs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, it's lovely to be here today, and I want to thank all of you who worked so hard to put together this symposium. It's been excellent, and I'm really honored to be here today and to bring some good news and talk about something that's very new and exciting in the world of funding, which is called crowdfunding. And I'm sure that many of you have heard about Kickstarter, and that's the type of program that I'm going to be talking about shortly. Before I get into the details about crowdfunding, I want to just tell you a little bit about CleanReach, which is the company that both my business partner and husband and I founded just recently. I'm going to tell you a little bit about that, and I've already had a lovely introduction to my background, so I don't need to go into that anymore. But there are some connections that I would like to make between the experience I've had over the last 8 to 9 years working in the international ocean energy arena to why I created CleanReach. Oops. So CleanReach is a global rewards-based crowdfunding platform to advance renewable energy industry. I'm going to talk a little bit later and explain what rewards-based crowdfunding means, but just as a way of introduction, it's one of several different types of crowdfunding, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it shortly. We launched in February of this year, so we are relatively new, but we're gaining traction. We launched with 6 projects, and one of them was quite successful. I don't know how many of you know about the nonprofit group. The acronym is INORE, I-N-O-R-E. It's an international, excellent, I see some hands. Well, they were one of our projects, and they successfully implemented one of our first crowdfunding projects, so that was quite an exciting way to get started. The customers that we have, the people who use our platform, are many of you sitting in the audience. There are those of you that are in the research community or developing technologies, or you may be representing a community, but any of you who need money to support an ocean energy initiative, that is who we want to support. So we are in, when we talk about crowdfunding, that means that we're raising money using an internet-based platform. So it's fundraising using the most current technology and tools today available on the web. And again, I'll tell you just a little bit more about it shortly. I mentioned to you that I've already, as I said, I've had a lovely introduction. You've heard my background, but there is a reason that I wanted to share my story with you and the experience that I've had in ocean energy, because it's the very reason that when we came back to the States after living in Australia that my husband and I founded CleanReach. And the reason is that across the industry, whether it's been, no matter which part of the world we've been in, I found that there are 3 universal issues, 3 consistent problems and challenges that all of us are facing. The first one has been funding. There's no surprise to that. It's been trying to raise enough money to do the initiatives and the projects that we want to do to advance our industry. And many of you have probably heard the term the Valley of Death. And what CleanReach wants to do has been created to overcome that Valley of Death. The second key challenge that I see continually faced by the industry is public support. And I think many of us recognize that if we don't generate public support with, no matter how great our technology is, we're not going to advance, because we need the public support to overcome permitting issues, to be able to test and deploy our technologies in the communities where they need to be implemented, and that's a very important part of growing this industry. So that's the second reason that CleanReach, or the second problem and challenge that CleanReach was created to address. The third challenge that I've experienced working across the industry is the exchange and connection of resources among each other. So one of the things I've observed is that industry to industry, there's a lot of people recreating the wheel, and it seems to be very inefficient. So the third challenge that we hope to address through the growth of crowdfunding is better industry connection and exchanging of resources. Okay, so that's enough of the background about CleanReach and why we got started. And so let me tell you a little bit about the details of crowdfunding. How many of you, just out of curiosity, how many of you are familiar with Kickstarter? Is there, okay, a few. Kickstarter is the most well-known crowdfunding platform. It seems to get a lot of visibility and recognition, but it's just one of several types. But essentially, crowdfunding is the acquiring of small amounts of money from a large number of people, otherwise as a crowd. And that money is collected to fund a specific project or initiative. Now, what a lot of people don't realize is that in terms of crowdfunding, when you hear the term, many people think it's just one type, that is just investment funding, or it's investment vehicle, when in fact there's actually three major types of crowdfunding, but there's variations of that in between. So the first type is rewards-based crowdfunding, which I mentioned is the type that we are. We're rewards-based crowdfunding. That is where we collect small amounts of contributions from a large number of people to fund specifically a project or initiative. The second type is the debt, or sometimes referred to as microfinance, and a lot of times this type of crowdfunding serves the needs of nonprofits or charitable purposes, and is donation-based, which is, from a legal standpoint, that's a very important distinction. And the third type is investment-based. And the investment crowdfunding is a type that's just absolutely exploding, especially here in Europe, and in particular for renewable energy development. There's an international conference on renewable energy investment crowdfunding that's going to be held in London at the end of this month. And so there's a lot of interest and a lot of growth. But the difference in investment crowdfunding is that the money comes from qualified investors, and they're funding the company, not a specific project. So the companies do have projects, but really what these investors are looking at, multiple investors are looking at the quality and the success of the company that is raising money through this strategy. So that's a really important distinction, is rewards is based on the project and investment looks more at the company and organization. So how crowdfunding works, now I'm just going to speak only about rewards crowdfunding. I'm not going to try and explain investment crowdfunding. That sort of speaks for itself. But simply put, rewards-based crowdfunding is writing your story, being clear about the project, and being able to tell that in a meaningful way to gain interest by a global crowd of people. You set a funding limit or a funding target. You set a campaign duration. Normally in rewards-based crowdfunding, it's 30 to 60 days, can be 90 days, but it's a very limited term. And when the campaign is implemented, you use all the tools at your disposal, communication tools, whether it's especially social media, especially digital marketing, using your networks, using every communication channel you can to reach out and tell your story and get financial support for your project. When you raise the money, if you raise all the money that you can within the stated time frame of your campaign duration, you keep it. And there aren't, unlike government programs and many other types, there aren't any restrictions. There's sort of the honor system to do the project and deliver it the way that you promised in your campaign. If you do not raise all the money that you said during the campaign duration, then no transactions take place. So you do not receive the money, nor are the contributors charged for their project. One of the big questions that I get asked continually is that in the ocean energy industry, we recognize it takes a lot of capital. And the question that I get asked is that somebody comes to me and says, I need $10 million to develop my prototype, and $10,000 isn't going to do it for me, so how can crowdfunding really help? Well, the key thing is to remember that crowdfunding is not just about raising money. It is also, I mean, that's an important part, but it is very important that it raises visibility and it raises public support for what you're doing. And in addition to that, for many of you looking for large sums of money, we've heard earlier today about the issues of risk reduction. Crowdfunding can be used as a stepping stone to reduce risk and to gain traction for your project, so you can demonstrate to large capital investors such as venture capitalists, venture capital funders, and others that you can do it, that you have a base of support, you know how to raise money, you've generated a small bit so far, and you use it as a building block to take your project further. I'm presenting examples of 2 case studies to illustrate what I mean about how to take about the ability to take a large project and break it down to something small for a successful rewards-based project. These 2 campaigns were implemented on 2 separate platforms before CleanReach got started, but they're very good examples of how you take something that's a very large project, you isolate a specific step or a definable project within that campaign, and you use that to raise the money that leads you further down your development cycle or your community project or whatever step is very important. The other question I get asked frequently is what types of projects lend themselves to crowdfunding? Quite frankly, crowdfunding is a way to be very creative. There aren't a lot of restrictions other than In our case, we want projects that are really going to advance renewable energy, so we want it to be within our industry. But inside of that, there can be everything from design ideas, analysis and research. I heard a lot today about environmental studies and research. That's an important part, as a great project for funding and reaching out to the public, because the public cares about the environment, and those are easy stories to tell. Special purpose projects are very, very critical. The idea of emergency response using renewables, and we heard this morning Bill Staby talking about providing water for areas in need. That is an amazing story to tell the public. So it's, those are the kinds of things that I know underlie many of your projects, and those are the things we need to talk about. But also funding projects in business development and areas of public recognition and public support are also important. So in rewards-based crowdfunding, there are 3 basic principles to success. There's your story. Again, I'm going to point out Bill Staby's presentation this morning, because that's a very important example, a very strong example of telling a compelling story and positioning your project. So you're not just building a technology, you're part of something bigger in our society today. And it's that story that has to attract and connect with people. The second part is then securing your supporters, and that's where you're reaching out through using your tools and your social media, digital marketing, and so forth, and really your social connections, because those are the people who are going to support you. And then finally, in rewards-based crowdfunding, it's your rewards, and it's saying thank you to your contributors, because they're giving some funds, and they may not, and they do expect something in return, even though it may be, even though they want to support you for altruistic reasons. Giving rewards is an important part of this overall program. So just about to wrap up, I wanted to let you know that my partner and I are giving a crowdfunding workshop tomorrow. We're doing this in partnership with Startup Lisboa, who's an incubator. We have already filled up it was announced and we filled up all the seats on this, but if there's any cancellations and if any of you are not signed up and are interested, feel free to let me know, and we'll see if we can bring you in. There should be some extra spaces, or hopefully we can fit you in. The key thing about tomorrow's workshop is that we're going to go into depth, into a lot more detail about how to actually do a campaign. So it's going to take the things I talked about in terms of what makes a campaign successful, and talk about really how to do it and the detailed technique about it. So in closing, I just want to say that my goal through CleanReach is to build a global community of support behind our industry. And the challenge for me is that we really can't achieve this global community until I have the stories to tell. So I hope that all of you will consider crowdfunding and be able to tell your story. Thank you.
Projects, Greenfield and Brownfield, so I'm looking forward as well for his presentation.
Thank you. Well, just a brief introduction to who CaixaBI is. CaixaBI is the investment banking arm of Caixa Deposits, which is the largest bank in Portugal. We have a vast track record in provision of financial services and structuring complex deals in the wide ranges of sectors, including, of course, the energy sector. Most or some of our deals have been awarded and recognized with Deals of the Year awards. There are a lot of magazines in the sector who tend to give some awards to some projects that have a structure which is different and evolutive from previous ones. Fortunately, some of our deals have won some of these awards. CGD, as you may, of course, know, is the biggest bank in Portugal. We have a vast presence worldwide, so we are present in 4 continents. There's a global reach, and this is something that, of course, we're very honored to. Our experience, CaixaBI's experience in the renewable sector is very, very vast. We have financed a wide range of projects: wind, solar, hydro, combined cycle, biomass, and natural gas. Most of these projects are located in Iberia, North America, and also in Brazil, that's where we are mainly focused on. In what regards energy and renewable energy, we have made very interesting transactions in wind, solar, hydro, and biomass. Most of the deals we financed are structured under a project finance structure. Fortunately, the historical performance of the projects we financed is very positive. So it's a sector that has been performing in most cases in line with what the base case estimations were supposed to, which is something which is very interesting in project financing, because of course the basis is the project and the revenues it produces. So having this experience and track record of these projects is quite interesting. In terms of offshore wind farms, and which is one of the topics of this conference, we have never financed an offshore wind farm in ever. In any case, we are following this sector very closely. In fact, we are a partner of DemoFloat, which of course you all know, and we are very looking forward to the challenges and to the opportunities that the wind farms and the deep water wind farms may bring to the energy production. Of course, they encompass some challenges, but I think the benefits they may introduce are very, very interesting, and is something that we are very interested in looking into. Just to give you some feedback on some clues on key conditions that promote success when structuring project finance deals. So the main aspect, I would say, there's always in the top, is a stable regulatory framework. That is the cornerstone of any structure. You've certainly heard what has happened for example, in Spain. There has been some turmoil on the regulatory framework. There has been some challenges. This is something which is not well looked by someone who is financing or trying to finance these deals that are based only on their cash flows, which is basically what project finance is. Another important aspect is, of course, the feed-in tariffs, covering a period larger than the term of the financing we are putting in place. So banks normally like to have some headroom between the feed-in tariffs and the term of the loan. Of course, another very relevant aspect is a robust contractual structure, where risks are taken by the entities who are better suited to handle those risks. So the contractual structure has to be very robust, and what we tend to unlike and what we prefer to lower is those gray areas where the responsibility is not well defined. Who is the responsible for well, normally when there are some interconnection between contracts, there are certain gray areas, and when things go bad, one tends to say that the fault is for the other. So we tend to like structures where this kind of things are limited to as much as possible, and of course we tend that there are some ways to minor these aspects, like some guarantees and everything, but it's something we tend to dislike. An obvious aspect is the quality of the suppliers and contractors. That is an obvious aspect. The fact, of course, the thing of proven technology and sound equipment providers is, of course, of very relevance. So when there's a stable and a technology is better suited to a project finance deal than if that's not the case. Historical data, very relevant, because as I said, the sources of our the way to pay the debt is basically the revenues the project can play, and we have to measure them very well so that we evaluate very much that we are not making a mistake when putting that money there, and so that we and the promoters find that the project at the end of the day was very good, which, as I said, has been the record so far in most of the energy projects we are financing. And finally, but not least, is the track record of the promoters and their capacity to develop these projects is, of course, of much relevance. They are the ones who lead the project. They must know how to do so, to put it in place, to cover all the missing gaps, so that we can, at the end of the day, build a structure which is sound and which can, at the end of its period, be profitable for all the stakeholders. And the banks are stakeholders as much as the promoters. So all of us, banks and promoters, want the project to be a success. And so we have to contribute and to define the risk metrics, the good risk metrics, so that when we do start the deal, we know what we are playing with. So basically, this is the presentation I was going to make to you. Some brief thoughts on this, and thank you very much for your time.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for invitation, and thank you, U.S. Embassy and WavEC, for putting this seminar together. I know you do it every year, and you're getting better with every year. When I'm going to talk about wave energy, we're going to talk about floating offshore wind. Yes, I started my interest in ocean renewables with wave energy, and I was by pure accident of kind of being approached by people that developed their wave energy converters, and they said, well, how can we make a business out of what we have? And I said, well, you have an engine, but you don't have a car, you don't have the wheels, and you don't have the road, and so you're trying to sell something that doesn't really have the infrastructure. And that was back in 2001. So I've been in this space for a while, and since that time, I think we got bodies of cars and some wheels and maybe even some roads. But what we don't yet have is a lot of energy that's coming into the grid from ocean renewables. So after I sold my first company and looked back, and I said, we still don't have any energy coming from the ocean, and we need to. And floating offshore wind was the closest I could come up with at that time that would combine ocean and electricity generation by merging two existing energy industries, turbine supplies, which is something that exists, and oil and gas industries that provide you with platforms. But before we get into what we're doing here, I titled this presentation as The Wind Float Journey, because it's interesting to be here and listen to all the talks. And what is even more interesting, that for the wind float to become what it did and to be successful, it took just about every element of every aspect that was mentioned here during today. This week, this is my third city in 3 days, if you can believe it. In Washington, D.C., I was on Monday, and Principal Power was awarded an award of being one of the 100 top global clean tech companies. It didn't come by itself. It took a long time to get there, but we have been recognized as the wind float is changing the world, is contributing to the offshore wind, and as a result, this panel of 84 experts in renewable energy felt that this is one of the potential companies that can make it through the valley of death, which is something that Stephanie was mentioning about. So how did we get from a concept of a wind float to something that is deployed in Portugal and has been in operation for over 3 years now and delivered 11 gigawatt hours into the grid, to being awarded as, or recognized rather, as one of the top 100 clean tech companies? Well, it starts with a journey. It started really with a concept. One day, if we can move to the next step, we can go there. After I finished with my first company called the WavEC company, which was the aqua energy that was mentioned in the bio, along the way I met some people that had a concept. They said, well, you know, we have these oil platforms, and why don't we take one of the oil platforms and put some turbines on them? And I said, well, that may work, because when we met, they said, you know, we designed this very, very stable platform. It's designed for the marginal oil fields, and you seem to kind of know how to do the business. Can you help us to make that a business? I said, no, I don't do oil, I do renewable energy. So if you can change your concept and use that stability that you have designed, which is very important for the use of the wind turbines, maybe something that will work. 3 months later, there was a concept. This is now a picture of existing unit. But back in 2008, which is when we started the company, it was a drawing, not on a napkin. It was on a computer screen, but it was just a drawing. We didn't have the models made. We didn't have the wave tank testing done. We didn't have anything yet. And it takes a leap of faith to believe that what's in front of you can actually mature from a picture into a real model in a wave tank, and then even a bigger model in a real ocean. It really does take a leap of faith. So as Stephanie was saying, you need to get public support. Well, before you get to the public support, how about getting people that have to be closer to it actually believe that it can get the public support, and this can actually work. I had a benefit of being a part of the DOE initiative at looking at the floating offshore wind, and I had a benefit of seeing the other concepts. And when I saw this one, because I'm not an inventor, I'm a business person, I said, this is the way to go. And there are features of the wind float that makes it very different compared to other systems. One of them, and I know I'm asked a lot about it, why is the turbine on one leg? Why is it not in the middle? Well, intuitively, you would think it should be in the middle to balance everything, to make it symmetrical, because we think in symmetry. But in technical terms, it's actually better to have it where it is, because it's a part of a structure. If you put something in the middle, you have to now bring support members. Support members are steel pieces. They cost money. You have to bring them. And now you're going to put your heaviest piece in the middle that doesn't have anything. So you have to spend money and time and everything to provide that support to hold something very heavy. Here, having one of the legs supporting the turbine, you don't have these extra costs. And if you choose to do an internet search and look for floating offshore wind semi-submersibles, guess what you will find? All of them have the turbine in the middle. And guess what the next thing you're going to find? All of them are pretty expensive. So because the offshore wind, being as any renewables, and you heard that earlier today, we have to meet the market price parity. We cannot assume that renewable energy can be delivered at a premium and would require feed-in tariffs or government subsidies or whatever, because it's not going to work. It has to be at the market parity price. The only way we're going to get there is if we focus on the levelized cost of energy and reduce it as much as possible. And that's what our goal is at Principal Power, to do everything possible to not only bring new technology, open new markets, change the paradigm of offshore wind, but along the path, we're also reducing levelized cost of energy such that we can meet the targets that are stated in US, Europe, UK, and the number is 10, but it's 10 euro cents, 10 cents, or 10 pence. The number is 10. Everybody wants to see renewable energy coming at these 10 currency units per kilowatt hour. Can we get there? I think we can. Can we get there today? No, not yet. It's going to take us time to get there. And in order to get there, you need money. So how did we get from this picture to reality to what we were able to do? Well, it took a lot of people that took a leap of faith, and some of those people actually, I'm not sure if they're still in the audience here, but they're here in Portugal. So what we ended up with is the wind float that you can see on this picture is being towed from Setúbal all the way to Povo de Varzim, Aguasadora, which is where it's installed, and you don't see any other big installation vessels. If you look in the offshore wind today, you'll see very large infrastructure items that are used. Here, you don't see them. So it's what you don't see that actually makes a big, big difference when it comes to levelized cost of energy. So it took those people that had a leap of faith, and it took relationships. Since I've been in ocean renewables since the year 2000, my journey to the wind float actually started in Portugal in about 2002, when I first came here with the help of the US Embassy, looking for partners that could participate in wave energy conversion. Why? I think you heard another speaker earlier today talking about the economic zone, the free economic zone that expands into the ocean 3 or 5 times bigger than the land mass. Well, that is a lot of resource that's available to Portugal. And yes, if the grid connection to Europe would ever happen, that is a resource you can exploit. How would you exploit it? Wave energy, offshore wind? Those are the elements that would need to be put together to do it. So EDP has been looking into offshore renewables for a while. Wave Energy Center and Antonio Sarmento, whom I met along the way, have been looking into that for an even longer while. And Antonio Falco, who was here before, but not here, and Teresa Pontes were kind of pioneers way back when the whole concept of wave energy started. So it was the people here in the country that said, you know, this is the area to be. What we didn't have was the money. And it took pulling together everything that could be pulled together. We didn't have crowdfunding at the time, back in the year 2001 or 2008 yet, but it almost felt like crowdfunding because it took entrepreneurs to put their ideas on the table, and it took angel investors to bring some seed money to do some wave tank testing to demonstrate, yes, this has a potential. Then it took government of Portugal to actually be convinced that maybe they should support this development. It took EDP to put money in. It put PT Ventures, which used to be called Enough Capital, to put money in. And it took a fabricator right here, Silva Matos, to put the money in. So you can see it took a lot of entities and a lot of people to put money into something to create a project that we have now successfully operating in Portugal. You don't see a lot of outside the country members. Well, that's because the project was in Portugal, and it's kind of hard to bring outside investors into a project that is being done locally. When you develop technology, you can potentially find investors that invest in your company, which could be from all over the world. But when it comes to the project, people normally look at local participation as much as possible, and the first question is going to be, who is going to be the user of this output, and who is going to be the owner of the project itself. And since it's local, it is owned by this joint venture that we set up back in 2009 called Wind Plus SA. So we also brought in European Commission money. When we started the whole process of funding, we wrote the first proposal to European Commission and we failed. It didn't go through, it didn't get funded, but it didn't stop us. We reused that same proposal and submitted again 2 years later, and then we did get funding. We did get funding for the project I think you heard before called the Demo Float. It didn't help us to build the device. The device built was funded by all those entities that you see here, but it helped us to maintain it and keep it running. So it wouldn't be possible to keep it in the water for the last 3 years and probably for another 2 without this additional support that we got from European Commission. And we didn't stop there. After we installed the device, we went back to European Commission and applied under the NER 300 scheme. And now we are, with EDP Renewables, taking the lead, building the WindFloat Atlantic, which would be installed in northern Portugal, north of Vieira de Castelo, carrying 4 turbines or so, which is much bigger than the prototype we built in 2011. So this is what we built in 2011. We went from a wave tank testing at the Berkeley wave tank to a little bit bigger wave tank called the Atlantic Ocean in about 30 months. That was very fast. It's very few companies can actually achieve that speed at which we were able to go from a wave tank testing to the prototype device. It took a lot of people. We had almost 200 people working during that period of time from all over Europe, and it was built here. And in fact, Antonio Amaral was here. Yes, he's there, right there. It was built at ASM in the north and at MPG shipyard in the south. And here's the video of the build. I think it's important to see what this really takes. And just to give you an idea of the size, this column is 10-story building. Okay. So it's important to notice a couple things. You notice that the WindFloat was built on shore. Complete structure, fully built on shore. Everything that we had to do was done on shore. Normally in the offshore wind today, you assemble everything offshore. So that costs you money, that costs you equipment, that costs you weather delays, that costs you insurance. We're able to eliminate all that by doing everything on shore. We'll put very simple anchors in the ocean, so we don't even disturb the ocean floor, and as a result, we are minimizing environmental impacts, something you heard about before. So this was something we did right here, and like I said, this is MPG, right around there. There's our Genting crane that did things. And because Lisnav is a ship repair yard, it's not shipbuilding yard, when that boat was getting repaired and was towed out, we had to leave as well. So not only did we had to manage a lot of infrastructure challenges, also we were limited by schedule and times when we had to do things and be on time, because when this dry dock was flooded, we had to leave. There was no question about it. And yes, we missed one of those. We actually asked the boat to stay a little longer, but when it was all done, it was done. So we towed WindFloat from Setúbal to Aguçadora, 400 kilometers north. Took us about 2 days to get there because we were managing the weather, making sure we arrived not when the storm is there, but when the storm has completed. And then we installed it in October 2011. So it's been 3 years that the device has been installed. It survived significant storms. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'll just show you the last two. This was the storm of January 2013. Remember that? That's Nazaré, the spot where everybody breaks and makes the surfing records. 18-meter waves. Now remember, Nazaré is not that far away from Agusadora. So the wind float was designed to survive what's known as a one-year storm. Operate up to one-year storm conditions. This was way beyond one-year storm conditions. We actually operated in these conditions for a little bit, and then we shut it down because it was already survival conditions. When we go into beyond the design criteria, then we just shut down the system and survive the conditions. And then January this year, this was our Christmas present from Mother Nature. This was also close to the limits of the one-year storm. If you look at the picture, the yellow piece is 10 meters. So the waves were quite significant. We did operate during that storm, and obviously we're able to record the data. And so that just proved that the structure was designed correctly. The objective of the prototype was verify the numerical models, make sure that we know how to fabricate, and demonstrate that the floating structure can be fully assembled on shore and can be completely installed without the use of any heavy lift vessels. And that's exactly what we demonstrated. The other piece that we had to demonstrate, which was extremely important, especially for the insurance industry that you heard about today, it is the power curve. That a turbine installed on a floating support structure will actually produce the same amount of energy per the same curve as the structure installed on a fixed foundation. And that graph shows it exactly that. That is the graph, the underlying curve, and I know you cannot see it, but there is a curve from Vestas, it's Vestas V80 turbine, that gives you the power curve. And the blue dots around it is the data measured from the wind float over the period of time. So we are at 10.92 gigawatt hours delivered to the grid. That's why it's approximate 11 gigawatts. In the next 3 days, we'll probably break the 11 gigawatt hour mark. And we have seen capacity factors greater than 47%. Today on land, you're kind of in the 30% range. So when you go offshore, and because the winds are unobstructed and there is no thermal degradation that's coming from the earth, you should be able to see much greater capacity factors than you would onshore. And that's just another proof that some of these concepts, some of these predictions now have been demonstrated. So now that prototype is there, what are we going to do next? Well, the prototype will probably be there for another year or two. With the Commission funding, with the EC funding, we have the money to carry on performance for another year through the middle of 2015. As a part of the next project, which is NER 300, or we call it Windfloat Atlantic, if the tariff remains as it is, then we'll probably keep it until we install the Windfloat Atlantic and then kind of swap one project for the other. So we are in what I would call crossing the Valley of Death. We haven't crossed it yet. We probably will be on the other side of it after we install these small-scale projects. Windfloat Atlantic is one of them, but we have others on the drawing board as well. So we're right around here. We're doing pre-commercial small-scale arrays in major markets of our interest, which is Portugal, UK, US, and Japan. Whether we're going to do all 4 projects or whether we're going to do less of them, only time will tell. But here's what it looks on the map. And yes, we're all over the world because that's where the ocean is. And our goal is to see the wind float installed in every ocean, sea, and the Great Lakes, because all those locations are the ones that we are now opening because we're eliminating the water depth. Wind float can be installed in any water depth greater or deeper than 40 meters. Today, technology limitations prevent you from going deeper than 60 meters. We can satisfy this interim or transitional water depth of 40 to 60. But once you go beyond 60, you really go floating. And Portugal doesn't have any locations where you can put fixed foundations. It can be only floating. And so there is the solution that's already been demonstrated suitable for the country. So as the country electricity needs increase, or as the grid becomes integrated with Europe, you will be able to capture this unbelievable resource available on the the coast of Portugal. So this was our prototype, 2 megawatts, small unit, right? Well, not that small. It's, what is it, 80, rotor diameter 80 meters and 56 meters hub height. The next one is going to be a bit larger. It's going to be 150 to 160 meter blade. Can you imagine that blade? Go look at Vestas' website. There is a video there, which is actually pretty good. They put 9 London buses in a row. That's the length of their blade. 9 London buses, okay? Transporting those turbines becomes a bit of a challenge, like you need waterways to be able to do that. Hub height, 100 meters. That's a big unit. And what's interesting, we can triple or quadruple the power output of the device, but the substructure, the wind float itself, the hull, would only grow 25 to 30%. And that is when your economies of scale will kick in immediately. So our objective, as I said before, levelized energy cost, levelized energy cost, levelized energy cost. This is the first step to get there. Besides optimizing the structure, which we are, we learned a lot of lessons on wind float 1. We are also achieving the economies of scale just because our scaling factors are very different between the turbine output and the structure itself. And so this structure will be carrying a 100-meter tall turbine sitting up there in storms, as you saw before, except now we're designing for 25-year life, not 5. And you do see this little thing called helicopter pad. Yes, there is still disagreements whether it should or shouldn't be there. Why is it there? Accessibility becomes a major issue to get to the structures in the ocean, because when the winds come, it's the waves that are going to be there. And guess what? The winds come through, you want to go and service the unit, and you can get there because of the waves. So you either get big infrastructure vessels to be able to access the unit in meter waves, in greater than 2 meter waves, or you may be able to put a helicopter pad and then surpass all the weather and land there. And the wind float gives you an ability to land with a smaller helicopter right on one of the platforms, rather than what's done in the industry today, where the people are hoovered on the nacelle with a helicopter, which requires much bigger helicopters and trained personnel, and so on and so on. Taking people out on a helicopter, you can do maintenance in a much faster way, because we're also designing for replacement of the failed components rather than fixing them in a corrosive ocean environment. So if you do plug and play modules, then your time to service becomes very short. And that's what the objective is again. We don't want to stop production. We want to produce as much as we can going forward. So our WindFloat Atlantic project actually had 3 phases. First one was the WindFloat 1. Second one is 25 megawatt installation. 25 megawatt is a required size by the NER 300 project funding. And it is supported by the Portuguese government, by European Commission, and it is being developed by EDPR. And it's going to be, as I said, North Portugal, somewhere in my gosh, there we go, north of Vieira de Castelo. We're also doing a WindFloat Pacific. That project is co-funded by Department of Energy. It's on the west coast of the United States. You heard a lot about Oregon today. Guess what? It's in Oregon. It is right around here. And the reason why it's there is because there is a lot of nuclear plant and coal plant will be going offline on the west coast of the United States. So by 2030, there is a stated and documented demand of almost 6 to 9 gigawatts of installed capacity that will be missing on the west coast. So if we can go with a demonstration project, we can now provide power planners with another option that they didn't even think existed. And west coast of US is almost similar to west coast of Portugal. It drops off very, very quickly. So this installation is going to be 18 miles offshore. It's up to 30 megawatts, so it's about the same size as WindFloat Atlantic, but it's in a 350-meter water depth. The units that will be installed in Vieira de Castelo is about 100-meter water depth. So there is a significant difference, yet distance to shore is about the same, and that's just the way the continental shelf works. You heard a lot about fishing. Guess what? You cannot install anything in US unless fishermen agree with you. So stop number one in the permitting was fishermen. If they said it's okay, then the next stop is public. If public says okay, then we go to the permitting agency. Yes, things are a little bit different in Portugal, but we have to adhere to the rules and regulations and conditions of every different market. So that's what we're doing, and I do have to thank a lot of people in this room, and I do have to thank the country and EDP that they were willing to take the leap of faith back then and actually pull everything together to make the project happen, because we are changing the future, or we're changing the paradigm of offshore wind. We're creating the future of offshore wind, because that is where the future will be. It's in floating, with one wind float at a time. Thank you.